Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this is actually going to be a video by a channel that usually I tend to recommend to people, at least compared to that of other boxing channels, and that is the HatmanStrikesBack. Well, he's going to be doing a short little video about the Canelo Alvarez situation, where of course Canelo Alvarez, he backed out of the PBC deal because, at least according to Canelo Alvarez's testimony, they apparently did not give him a confirmed purse for that of his wanted Jamal Charlo fight that he wanted in that of May. So apparently he went over to that of the zone to fight that of Jaime Munguia, and there's also been reports of him possibly fighting either this May or later on down the line that of Edgar Berlanga. Now, of course, there's been a multitude of conversations overall stating that, is Canelo Alvarez avoiding that of David Benavidez, or is it something overall that was along that of the PBC's fault when it comes down to it, because they did not give Canelo Alvarez his confirmed money? And, to be quite honest with you, I can't really 100% tell, but what I will say is that I can kind of understand both sides of the equation. But one thing I am going to say is this, is that Canelo Alvarez, after the Jaime Munguia fight, I don't think that the Edgar Berlanga fight is going to be an acceptable fight. Because Edgar Berlanga, at the end of the day, he is not an elite A-grade level opponent. And Jaime Munguia, you could even debate, is not an A-grade level opponent. Now, in my view, Jaime Munguia definitely, I would not say, is an elite opponent. But at least you could debate that he's somewhat along the A- level. He did just end up defeating and knocking out and having the best performance over John Ryder that anyone has had, probably within their career. So I'll at least give Jaime Munguia that amount of credit when it comes down to it. But, when it comes down to it, once again, if Canelo Alvarez does fight that of Edgar Berlanga, he is going to get a lot of criticism, and very well warranted when it comes down to it, because Edgar Berlanga, and, it could just be that Canelo Alvarez, it could just be that, he said, well, if you're not going to have my confirmed money for Jamal Charlo, no problem. I'm just going to go over to the zone where they're going to pay me, and I can fight that of Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia, and I can push this fight off for another year. All right, and I can push this David Benavidez fight off for another year. So you either give me my money, or overall, I'm going to push this fight off for another year. It could be Canelo Alvarez doing that. It could be just that overall he's trying to make the fight bigger overall than what he believes that it is going to be that of right now. Kind of like that of the Mayweather and Pacquiao paradigm, or that of the Mayweather and Pacquiao, success. But at the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez is going to have to try to get in the ring with that of David Benavidez. And it's going to have to be at the very least this year or at the beginning of next year. It's going to have to be that. It is what it is, But we'll see what ends up happening with that of Canelo Alvarez. But anyways, let's see what Hatman has to say. Let's get straight into it.
Canelo Alvarez needs to be stripped of his WBC belt, and before too long, his WBA belt as well. But the WBC belt, that's long overdue now. You've got David Benavidez, who is the interim champion with the WBC, and with the WBA, you've got David Morrell as, I think, interim champion or
And you notice that a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, and Hatman is not a part of the LDBC nor new media, and that's a big part of the reason why I like the Hatman channel, because he seems to me to be a lot more unbiased and a lot more clear overall, or what I'll at least state is that, he doesn't really have a huge bias, at least when it comes to a lot of this commentary. Now, do I agree with everything that he necessarily says? Not necessarily. But I would certainly recommend his channel overall over any LDBC or new media channel, over any of them. It is what it is. But anyways, when it comes down to, once again, when it comes to that of a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, of course, they did not mention that David Benavidez did not fight that of David Morrell. Now, that being said, I don't really blame David Benavidez overall for not taking that fight. He's in his mandatory position. And on top of that, why would you want to fight David Morrell right now, when you could potentially get that Canelo Alvarez fight, or even potentially bigger fights out there? You could fight that potentially of Charlo. You could fight that potentially of Andrade. You could fight potentially that of Caleb Plant, which he did fight a couple of those fighters. Why would you want to fight David Morrell, a guy that that is not super popular at the moment? Very, very, very dangerous for anyone to fight right now. And on top of that, he doesn't have a belt, and you're not going to get a big payday for fighting him. There would just be no reason for David Benavidez to fight him right now.
regular champion, whatever it is. But the best case scenario for me as a boxing fan would be to see David Benavidez, if Canelo continues to avoid these guys, to see David Benavidez fight David Morrell for a vacant belt. Now, I know that David Morrell has been calling out Benavidez. He thinks he can beat Benavidez, and Benavidez doesn't seem that keen on the fight. I can't blame Benavidez.
No, and overall, why would he be keen on the fight? Listen, at the end of the day, what I will say about Canelo Alvarez is this, and I understand that a certain amount of people are going to say, well, belts aren't that important to Canelo Alvarez. He's looking for the money, and to a degree, I agree with that. But at the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez, he is going to have to start facing some of these super middleweights. It is what it is. He's been in that weight division now for a few years, I believe, when it comes down to it. He's been in there ever since, he fought that at Callum Smith firstly, and then gained all the titles, and that's a great accomplishment. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to start facing some of these super middleweight fighters, whether you think that you're getting paid enough or not, because you do have the belts, and if you don't overall think that you're getting paid enough, no problem, but then give up the belt, overall, pretty much give that opportunity to David Benavidez and the other fighters, and overall, if you think that you can move on to bigger and better fights, no problem, but then Canelo is going to have to get stripped. I do agree with that point.
Benavidez at this stage.
That is if Canelo Alvarez still, if he refuses to fight that at David Benavidez. But of course, I don't know exactly 100% what's going on, because there's been reports overall once again about, them stating that they offered, Canelo $60 million. Canelo said that he received no such offer. Could it be that Canelo Alvarez's side is lying? Who knows? I don't know. But what we do know is that the Benavidez side did say that they got $5 million for an offer for Canelo. And that allegedly they accepted it, but then all of a sudden they didn't hear from Canelo. That's what they said. It does seem a little bit odd to me that they moved on so fast, but, it could just be overall that, it could just be once again that, maybe Canelo was sending it out there, maybe overall kind of for some wolf tickets or to make it look like he sent him a legitimate offer and maybe was hoping that he would decline it in order overall to make it look like David Benavidez overall was trying to price himself out, or that overall he, was trying to back out of the fight. So this could be Canelo Alvarez playing games. I'm not necessarily sure.
For not wanting to risk his position because he's been mandatory for so long. He's fought people to get to that position. He's earned that spot. Once he becomes champion, obviously I'll be a lot harder on him. I'll expect a lot more from him with regards to who he fights. But as it stands right now, he's worked his way into a mandatory position with the WBC. That's overdue. He should be getting a shot at Canelo. With David Morrell, he hasn't been, as far as I'm aware, in his position as regular champion or interim champion, whatever it is with the WBA, as long as Benavidez has with the WBC. But nevertheless, ideal scenario, Benavidez versus Morrell for some kind of vacant belt. I'd love to see it. And it will be much more difficult then for Canelo Alvarez to continue to make out that he's the king of the division if he's no longer undisputed. It would allow more pressure to be applied to Canelo to fight these guys. As it stands,
I would agree with that if Canelo Alvarez is truly avoiding David Benavidez, at least to the point overall to where he's just not accepting any deal. And I definitely would agree with that. Canelo Alvarez apparently left the PBC because they did not give him a confirmed purse for Jamal Charlo. The PBC is stating overall that, that they were going to apparently give him a confirmed purse as long as he was going to fight David Benavidez in September. And apparently PBC's side is that Canelo backed out. Could that be true? It very well could be. I'm not necessarily sure. Apparently a recent story, Eddie Hearn apparently stated that he apparently wanted to make the David Benavidez and Canelo fight on DAZN. And then apparently Benavidez' side said that they wanted to make it on Amazon Prime. Which, if Canelo was over at DAZN, you more than likely are going to have to make it over at DAZN. But did that actually happen? I'm not sure. We'd have to hear the Benavidez' side on that. And, we don't know whether they would tell the truth on that or not either. So this once again is just a big jumbled mess. But Canelo Alvarez, once again, after that next fight with DAZN, he is going to have to very much try, overall in my view, to renegotiate with that of the PBC, or try overall to get with them, because nobody wants to see you fight Jaime Munguia, overall, and then Edgar Berlanga. I mean, actually, I don't mind the Jaime Munguia fight, but the Edgar Berlanga fight, nobody really wants to see that. And in my view, if you fight Jaime Munguia and then just Edgar Berlanga straight words after that, it's going to be because of one of two reasons. Either A, Canelo basically is stating that, if you fuck with my money, basically I'm going to make you wait for another year. Or B, when it comes down to it, he doesn't want to fight that at David Benavidez. Now, if I had to guess, Canelo Alvarez probably wants to make this fight as big as possible, so he might wait overall for this fight to even happen next year, and that is September. But Canelo is going to receive a lot of criticism if it is shown overall that Canelo Alvarez clearly is refusing a lot of these deals, or refusing overall clear-cut good offers, even if he believes that he's entitled to that money. And I get it to a degree that he is. But there's only so much that, that you can wait for a fight to happen before the criticism starts to pile on. So we'll see what happens.
Right now, the sanctioning bodies, particularly the WBC, are complicit in aiding and abetting Canelo in ducking his mandatory David Benavidez. This needs to stop.
Well, once again, we'll see overall, maybe a little bit, along the way, how the negotiations went and all that other stuff. I'm not sure. Canelo has his side. The Benavidez team has his side. But what I will say is it's the WBC definitely, they have been helping out their champions for a very long time, even in terms of some moves overall that would not be looked at as complimentary towards that of boxing. Whether it be Canelo, whether it be Deontay Wilder, whether it be Teofimo Lopez, or Vasily Lomachenko, whether it be Canelo, any one of those guys, the WBC definitely has some shady moves going on.
WBC are the worst culprits in boxing for this stuff. Not that the other sanctioning bodies haven't been guilty of this as well. It's just that the WBC are the most prolific when it comes to placing their favorite champions in the witness protection program. The super middleweight division is being held up by Canelo Alvarez. If it's too hot in the kitchen, get out. Simple. I got no issue with Canelo going off and fighting whoever he wants to.
I will say that overall about Canelo Alvarez, that if Canelo Alvarez says that, listen, I'm not getting enough money overall for the Benavidez fight, blah, 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 listen, I don't really have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, dude, it's like you're going to have to get rid of those titles then and stop holding up the weight division, because when's the last time that Canelo Alvarez really fought a legitimate super middleweight overall? I mean, he fought John Ryder, I believe, right before Jamel Charlo, to be fair. He was a legitimate super middleweight. But in terms of a legit super middleweight, I'm talking about one of the better ones there. The last time that he fought one was Caleb Plant. So we'll see.
Just free up the belts and allow them to be contested by a couple of other fighters.
And once again, that's not me completely criticizing his resume. I don't think that the Jamel Charlo fight was bad, and the Dimitri Bivol fight definitely was a great fight to take, even though, of course, that he lost that one. But at the end of the day, if you're going to continue not fighting super middleweights, then you are going to have to give up some of those belts, or he is going to have to be stripped, period.
That's all I'm saying. If Canelo wants to get a payday against Munguia, or a payday against Belanga, or whoever else, good luck to him. Just give up the belts, stop stagnating the division, allow Morrell to fight for the full WBA, Benavidez to fight for the full WBC, or for them to fight each other for one of those belts. And even better,
I'm not 100% sure if David Benavidez would take that David Morrell fight, even if it 100% was for a title. I could be wrong about that. But David Benavidez is pretty much in the perfect position right now, because he's already in a weight class where he's pretty much bigger than everybody else within that weight class. Now, to be fair, David Benavidez has shown me that he's willing to take on any fight, at least at the 168-pound weight division. Other than that, at David Morrell, I won't blame him for right now, because David Morrell just really doesn't bring anything to the table in terms of legacy that much, or in terms of a title or a payday. But if it ended up being for a title, I wonder how much courage David Benavidez actually would have in terms of taking that fight. Because David Morrell is not a fighter that you really want to see in the ring right now, really if you're anybody. Because it's like, he's a huge threat, and on top of that, what does he bring to the table in terms of pay-per-view numbers, or what does he bring to the table in terms of a payday you're going to get? He's a huge threat, and on top of that, for the amount of reward that you're going to get, it's not going to be that much compared to some other fighters. So why would you really want to fight him next?
Scenario, how about...
And that was the same predicament that Demetrius Andrade was in for a very long time.
Both belts become vacant, WBC and WBA, and both sanctioning bodies agree that Benavidez and Morrell should be allowed to fight for these two vacant belts in the one fight. I'd love to see that. We as fans need to apply pressure to Canelo. It's been many years since I felt the need to apply pressure in whatever little way I can using my YouTube channel. The last time, of course, was when Canelo Alvarez was avoiding Gennady Golovkin. He avoided him for what, at least 2 years? And eventually we did get the fight we wanted to see because the fans applied enough pressure, combined with the fact that Canelo and Oscar De La Hoya saw some weakness, some slippage in Golovkin. They decided to finally bite the bullet and go in that direction and take that.
Well, I'm not going to state that. I think overall that stating that Canelo took that fight against Gennady Golovkin because he finally saw some slippage, I'm not going to state that. That's a narrative that I've never really truly agreed with, and the reason why is because had Gennady Golovkin, had he looked like what he did against Sergey Derevyanchenko, for example, then I get it. But Gennady Golovkin's fights, previously before Canelo, he was fighting Danny Jacobs, which is the biggest win in his career. When it came down to it, it was a very close fight, probably 7 rounds to 5, 8 rounds to 4. But Gennady clearly won. I mean, would you say that that was really signs of slippage, or that was just really a tough fight in general? And then, of course, right after that, he fought Canelo, I believe. And then after that, he fought Vanos Martirosyan, the guy that had never been stopped, against Andrade or Lara. And Gennady Golovkin knocked him out within 2 rounds. So I'm not really going to say that there was signs of slippage. That's a narrative that a lot of people love to use, especially when they love to tear down Canelo Alvarez. And I'm not saying that Hatman is trying to do that. It's probably what he truly believes. But at the end of the day, do I agree with that? No, I don't. But Hatman's also the same guy that believes that Mayweather was picking and cherry-picking opponents throughout his career, also at the weakest times. Do I believe that? No. Now, do I believe that there were times where he fought an opponent that maybe wasn't at the best point in time in his career? Yeah. But you can say the same thing about other fighters in Canelo Alvarez as well.
Guy on. Same has to be done here. We have to apply the pressure. We have to bang the drum. We have to raise the alarm that we've got a champion here who is not living up to his duties. It is brutal at the top of the sport, but that's what you take on when you become a champion. If you don't like that kind of pressure, then maybe it's time for you to retire, because this is what the fan...
I would agree with that if Canelo Alvarez overall, once again, if he clearly has a great offer and overall he clearly is not still accepting the David Benavidez fight. The question is overall, once again, is who is lying here? And it could potentially be Canelo Alvarez's team. I'm not necessarily sure when it comes down to it, but maybe overall Benavidez is taking this fight next against Alexander Gvozdyk overall. Apparently Gvozdyk is promoted by that of Eddie Reynoso. It could be overall to promote the fight a little bit more. Who knows? But at the end of the day, once again, it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. But Canelo, I don't really think that anyone's going to mind the Jaime Munguia fight next for him. But if he ends up fighting Edgar Berlanga, he's going to get a lot of criticism, and very well warranted. Because there's no reason to fight someone like an Edgar Berlanga. Because you're really not going to get a major payday. Not a lot of people are really going to pay for that fight, in my view, when it comes down to it. So you're going to have to try to renegotiate with the PBC, in my view, after this next fight against Jaime Munguia, which is an acceptable fight. But after that, you're going to have to try to renegotiate with Al Haymon and the PBC.
I don't like the idea. Us true boxing fans, we're not fanboys, we don't have a horse in the race, we just want to see the best fights. We do not want to see these fighters sitting on the top of their perch, cherry picking. I don't care what the guy has achieved before. As long as he's a champion, I'm going to hold him up to the standard of a champion. Simple. So anyway, rant
I would agree with that.
over. I'll leave it there. And before I go...
But anyways, that's pretty much overall about it overall, for this video. But I just thought that was very interesting. And I do agree somewhat with Hatman that Canelo Alvarez, and he has a great career. But at the end of the day, you are going to have to fight David Benavidez. All the titles, you have all the titles in that weight class. You are going to have to fight your mandatory, and you're going to have to fight the guy that everybody's calling for. Once again, is this me saying that Canelo is ducking him? Not necessarily. But once again, it's going to be interesting to see where Canelo, what he does, within this year. Because he is going to have to try to renegotiate with that at the PBC. But we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. If he doesn't renegotiate with the PBC, he's going to have to really try to make that David Benavidez fight happen with whatever network he's on. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.